Our St Andrews Physics Department has recently been joined by our interviewee today, Dr. Hamid Ohadi. Our talk ranged from the difficulties experienced by new academics, what he misses about Iran, and the hobby he has mastered. Enjoy listening. You're listening to Insight, the University of St Andrews Student Physics Society's podcast. I'm your host, Samuel Avery. Join us as we journey into the lives of St Andrews academics, discovering their passions, inspirations, and motivations. Today on Insight, we're interviewing Dr. Hamid Ohadi, one of our new lecturers. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So could you tell us a bit about your positions here at St Andrews?
I'm a new lecturer appointed in January in 2018, and I'm supposed to work half of my time doing lecturing and half of it doing research. So I'm also building up a new lab in the basement.
Okay, and what path led you to your position here at St Andrews?
So I think I probably should start when I was in primary school. I had a really nice teacher who was sort of sending hints about physics to students, and it got my interest, and I got interested in relativity at that time, and it was just really
back in primary school.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was like, oh, this is kind of cool, and I really like this. I got really into Einstein, and I think it's a very common story. But since then, I decided to become a scientist, and so I went to the university in Tehran at Sharif University. Studying physics, and once I finished, I wanted to do a PhD, and it wasn't quite. It didn't make much sense to actually stay in Iran because I wanted to do experiments, and the funding was quite limited at that time, and I think it is still now. So I applied for two positions actually. I applied for an astronomy position, and a position in quantum information in Imperial College. The position that I applied for astronomy, they didn't give me any funding, so I didn't go there, and I ended up being an experimental quantum information kind of scientist. I did my PhD in London. I went to Southampton for 3 years. I continued working on cold atoms, and I got to a point that I thought this is getting really difficult. It was really tough. It was really hard work to get new results and making an impact in that field. And I was about to actually just quit academia and quit research, and I decided maybe I could change fields and start from scratch, something that is new in the field, and there's a lot of opportunity to make impact. So I changed to polaritons, microcavities, and went to Cambridge after that for another postdoc. And then I ended up in Southampton for my more permanent position as a lecturer.
And are you more happy with your field of study now?
I think I am. Yeah, I think it is a lot more vibrant and a lot easier to establish yourself compared to other well-established fields such as cold atoms or the old school physics.
And do you ever wonder about what could have been with astrophysics?
Oh, I think I probably would have ended up an experimental astrophysicist. I can't really imagine how my research would have been. It just goes to show how easy it is to end up in a field that is completely different from what you were imagining, and still enjoy it. I think as long as you keep the spirit and enthusiasm in doing research, it doesn't really matter where you end up.
Okay, so could you actually tell us a bit about your research now then?
So I work on, as I said, these polaritons. These are quasi-particles, as in they are not real particles. They are mixed particles. Half of it is light, half of it is a matter, and they form this hybridized light matter particle, which shows properties of photons and on matter at the same time. And they're quite useful because usually photons don't interact with each other, right? So if you have two torches, you shine them at right angles and the light just passes through. And if you want to make something that is interacting, composed of photons, you need to mix it with a matter component. And so the matter component gives you interaction, and the photonic component gives you speed and the dynamics that you're interested. So these exciton polaritons, they are half electron holes. They are paired electron holes, like an atom, like a hydrogen atom. There's electron hole bound. So that forms the matter part, and the photonic part is a photon that is confined in between two very high reflective mirrors. And if you make this mirror really reflective, the light bounces back so many times and get absorbed by the matter and re-emitted again. It does it so many times that it becomes indistinguishable from a new entity or a new particle, which we call it exciton polaritons. And I play with these particles. I make a bunch of them. I look at their interaction. So that comes as a fundamental part of it. But it turns out they can also be used for making really fast optoelectronic switches and future photonic computation. So I also have an interest in the application side of it.
Okay, and do you have a favourite thing about your field of research then?
Favourite thing? I think the most favourite thing that I like about this research is that experiment is most of the times ahead of theory. So it actually makes sense to do experiments, if you like, to find out new things that cannot be explained by theory. So we go into the lab, we measure something, so we scratch our heads, oh, what is happening here? We don't have a theory for this. And then we either through our own investigation or collaboration with the theorists, we find what the reason behind it is. I think there's this really big contrast between this field, as in the condensed matter physics, and other well-established fields. For example, in cold atoms, there's hardly any phenomena that is not explained by theories. So the theories that worked out pretty much all the theory that it can possibly have.
So it's new ground then.
Right.
That's constant sense of discovery.
Exactly, yeah. So that gives you the sense that you're not just an engineer.
And you mentioned that now you're going to be doing some lecturing as well. So, and you mentioned before to me that you had some difficulties transitioning. Could you tell us about that?
So the difficulty transitioning it was from being a postdoc to an academic, a full-time academic. So if your audience doesn't know, once you do your PhD, you cannot immediately get a position, a permanent position somewhere in a university. It used to be like that back in, I don't know, the 20s and 30s. But there's been so much competition, and there's been so much, the field has advanced so much that to get to the edge of science, or edge of research, you have to spend so many years to get to the level that you can actually do cutting edge research. So once you do your PhD, you do a few years of postdoc, and it has become common that you do two postdocs, for example. So you go from one university to another, you spend 2 years here, 2 years there, 3 years there, and then you need to build up your career, your resume or your CV show a lot of publications. You need to show a lot of independence and things like that. And this is at the time where you're meant to actually settle down and have a family, and it's not ideal for your life in general to pack up all your things, go from another country to another, or go from another city to the other. It's quite hard for academics and between this transitional postdocing period to survive, if you like, this period. And so I struggled a little. There were moments that I thought, is it really worth it? I'm not sure whether I am actually that much bothered about staying in academia. But in the end, it was these moments where usually when your paper gets rejected. So that's exactly the time that you think, I'm so fed up with this, I just want to go out. But it usually lasts for a few days, and then you pick up again, and there's some really exciting new things happening. So actually, I want to carry on. So I did that for my case, it was quite long. Actually, it was about 7 years, because I also changed field. So I had to start from scratch, if you like, to build up my career. So I also lost a few years in that. But generally, this is the case, and it is particularly harsh on women to start their academic life. I think there's a real problem in the current system. It is quite unfair to the women that work in academia. There should be some sort of other means to help, and I don't know exactly what it is, but it is a real problem.
So there's a real difficulty in building up your experience and balancing it with the rest of what's expected of life.
Mostly about the insecurity in your job position, right? You don't have a permanent position. You stay in positions usually are about 2 to 3 years, and once you stay in that position, you have to go somewhere else or find a permanent position. It's quite unlikely you could get a permanent position after 2 years after you did your PhD. So you would have to move, and this moving is at the time where people want to settle. When you are, it starts from 30 to 35, and this is the right time where you want to build up your family and things like that, and it becomes a real issue. Unfortunately, this is how it is. I don't exactly know what the solution is, but that was part of the problem for me.
Well, we're very glad that you made it. What was the biggest worry that you had with this change then?
From going from my postdoc to a lecture, you mean? I think my biggest worry was you're suddenly becoming responsible for not just for yourself, but for many other people, especially PhD students and new postdocs that you're gonna hire. And this sense of new responsibility was a little bit worrying at the beginning. It's like, oh, what if my proposed research doesn't actually produce any results? What if it completely fails? And so there was a little worry at the beginning. You suddenly are put in a behind the wheels, and then everybody said, "Okay, goodbye. Now you're gonna lead your research." So there were a few months that I thought, "Oh God, this is quite scary," but it was only a couple of months. I picked up on that.
And do you have like a big hope or a goal for your time here?
Yes, I actually want to just have a really large group. I like large groups, but my previous group was quite large, and I really liked having 10, 20 odd people working together as a group and doing something that is interesting. So one of my ambitions is to have a really large group, to be very productive, and to convey the expertise in the group to the students also, who are doing bachelor's and MPhil's degrees, to get them involved, to transfer some of the skills to them before they, I don't know, if they end up in industry or they want to continue their career in academia, to help them on that front too.
And is there something that you'd like students to know about academics, either lecturers or researchers? Do you think there's something that's important to get across?
I think probably the most important thing to tell the students is that the academics are quite busy and they have a lot of worries. So the students think, oh, okay, the professor is just going to give lectures and they're just going to back to their office and come back again the next session, give more lectures. That's really far from the truth. You would go, once you do your lectures, most for at least half of the academics similar to me, you also need to worry about applying for funding. You need to also continue your research. You have PhD students. You have to think about your future career. And this is just what's happening in the university. And there's lots going on at home too. So there's a lot on academics' mind. And I think it is good for the students to also appreciate that it is not just them. There's a lot going on. So the academics could be a bit, sometimes, I don't know,
bit hard
edgy.
To reach.
Yeah, hard to reach and inaccessible. But there's a reason for it.
Okay, so there's a lot of behind the scenes.
Yes, there's a lot behind the scenes.
Necessarily seen. So you've mentioned that your home country is Iran. What prompted you to want to work or study in the UK?
I got really excited by the quantum information processing at the time that I finished my bachelor's degree. And that was really hot at that time. It was just the beginning of the whole field of quantum technologies. And I had just passed a course at the university about quantum information, and I thought I want to do experiments and I want to get into this field. That was the main part, but I was also quite fed up with the system in Iran. It was just completely on my nerves. It was just really difficult to even if there were opportunities for me to stay, I wouldn't have stayed. So I decided to go out.
So it was really just change of scene, change of system,
That's
change
right,
of
yeah.
subject or pursuing that subject. And would you say there's one big prominent difference between here and Iran then? Or was it hard to adjust to living?
The prominent difference, I think, this in terms of, the society, freedom was the biggest. The biggest. It was like a fresh air to me. It was quite suffocating when I was doing my bachelor's. Even I was mostly concentrating on doing my studies, but I could really feel this pressure from the politics and the society just crushing me. So once I got out, it was like it was a fresh air. I really easily settled into my new environment. So I really appreciated that. But I struggled for a bit with the weather. Coming from somewhere that is quite warm to somewhere that was cold. It was
a bit chillier.
It was cold, but it was minor, so it wasn't so bad.
And were there any kind of preconceptions about the UK that you had that were shattered?
So I don't think I had any preconceptions at that time. I think I think I was so young that I just didn't have any conceptions, and these conceptions usually build up once you get to your 30s or 40s. I wasn't to that stage.
So came in with a very open mind.
That's right, yeah.
And could you name one thing that you miss and one thing that you don't miss from Iran?
I miss the weather and the food. It is really nice. The weather is gorgeous. It gets 30, 35 in the summer, and it gets you get proper snow, and it gets really cold. You can go skiing 1 hour away from Tehran when I'm from, and it's really nice. I love that. And the food I really like. It's really good. It's sort of between Turkish and Indian food, somewhere in between. So
better than here.
Yeah. And one thing I don't really miss is the Iranians are a bit nosy. They want to know exactly what you're doing. They want to find out. They're just meddling, and whoa, what is this? What are you doing? Oh, you shouldn't do it that way. You should do it this way. So I don't miss that part. So it was quite nice to leave that culture behind.
Whereas here it's everyone keep yourself to yourself. Don't make eye contact. So Iran's had like a massive increase in research output though in the kind of past 2 decades. It increased like nearly tenfold from 1996 to 2004. So, could you ever see yourself going back for research? I mean, you sounded like no, but...
Maybe. Probably not. I think I've been away for quite some time that I don't really feel myself fit with the current status, and it is always so the environment that you want to do research is not just money, or it's not just productivity in terms of papers. There's a lot going on behind the culture of doing science that is important too. Being given independence to do what you want to do, and not have politics to force you to do the things that you don't want to do. I think these are quite important. I'm not quite sure whether Iran is in that state yet.
So with enough change, it would need
with
to
enough
be
change.
A lot of change there. So I'm moving on to some more general questions. Do you know of any physicists that you think deserve more recognition?
Well, not physicist by label, but I really think Rosalind Franklin, she really deserved a lot more than what is currently conceived in the society and between general people. I think it was a real shame how she was treated, and how the credit didn't go really to the right
for
person,
her work on
right?
DNA.
For her work on DNA, and it is a big shame, and I think she should have got the all the credit, to be fair, and it was sort of stolen from her. So I think she really deserved it.
Well, hopefully with time she'll get a bit more. At what point did you first consider yourself a physicist? You said you were fixated on science quite young, so.
I don't really know. It was sort of it was a very gradual transition from somebody who is just interested in physics to somebody who is actually a physicist. I'm not quite sure whether I am still considering myself a proper physicist, but I regard the things that I'm doing in the physics domain. So I think there was a gradual transition. You just gradually build up. It is quite hard to just suddenly call yourself a physicist when you have role models like Richard Feynman, Einstein, and others. These are massive Paul Dirac, these massive giants that they were the physicists, and then suddenly you are this little man that is doing some little research and publishing little results, and then suddenly you just call yourself, oh, I'm a physicist too. It takes a long time to get to that.
They would be physicists with a capital P.
Right.
You could be lowercase.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So, what's one of the smaller things that you appreciate about life? It could be the sunsets or the dew on the grass, or how good Snickers are. I don't know.
Right. I quite appreciate a good ale in a lazy afternoon, and chatting to friends, and just being really laid back. Sorry. I quite appreciate that.
So kind of moments with friends and ale.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one. So do you have any hobbies that you're up to when you're not researching or lecturing?
I used to have a hobby, which I don't get really the time to actually follow it anymore as much as I really like. I do Persian calligraphy, and I'm quite good at it. So that's one of the things that I can actually say I'm very, very good at.
Persian calligraphy?
Yeah, so this is
not something we've heard before.
Right,
so
yeah.
What does that entail?
That entails a bamboo pen and some ink, and then usually involves writing a poem, a Persian poem. And literature in Persian is very, very, very strong. And you can easily find something that is really beautiful, rhymes really well, and then it actually is nice to write it down and then look at it every once in a while. So that's what I used to do, and I became a master in calligraphy. But I unfortunately I can't get the time, the peace of mind to actually do it as often as I really like to do.
Yeah, well, I hope you find some time to do that. That sounds great. And you said master there, with a calligrapher with a capital C.
Right, yes.
Are there any hobbies that you miss being able to do in Iran that you can't do here? Or what's the classic hobby as people grow up? Like here it's football or whatever, if you're on the primary school field. Is it the same over there?
The main ones are, yes, football and similar to here. But I used to go and ski every weekend, and before I come to Scotland, it was quite difficult to do that. It was quite expensive, and I quite missed that. But now I'm in Scotland. There's a lot of opportunity to go.
Hopefully a bit easier.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. So I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. And are there any hobbies or activities that you want to try out but you haven't got around to? But I guess that's getting back on the ski slopes maybe.
Yeah, well, I really like to get into golf.
Well, you're in the right place for it.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm told.
That's right.
I've got no interest in it myself.
Yeah, I haven't tried it before, and it would be quite interesting to try.
Have you been looking around the department for a guide, a tutor?
Yes. Well, Scott in the stores, he's quite keen to show me how to do it. So I'm looking forward to that.
Some tidbits of knowledge out there, yeah. So we're going to move on to the quickfire questions, so you can answer these a bit quicker, but feel free to expand upon your answer if you want. So favorite music genre and favorite song?
I was always into psychedelic music, psychedelic rock, and I'm still am. And I think it's probably a cliche between physicists, but I'm a big fan of Pink Floyd, and my favorite song is "Wish You Were Here." So every time I feel a bit kind of blue, I just put that on and have a really good time, have fun with it. Yeah.
How I wish you were here. We're just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl, year after year, running over the same old ground. What have we found?
That sounds nice. Do you have a favorite non-academic book?
Yeah, so once I was really into 1984, and that was right when I moved from Iran to London, and that book really resonated with me and the situation I was experiencing. So that still, I think, is my favorite classic. But I just recently was reading The Silk Road, and I quite enjoyed reading that.
Well, 1984 is quite dark. You might need to put on a bit of Pink Floyd after that. Yeah. How many cups of coffee a day do you have?
I used to have 5 or 6, but I'm cutting it down, so I only have 3 now.
Only 3, so reasonable.
Yeah.
Reasonable. How many languages do you speak, or are there any languages that you'd like to learn?
I speak only 2. I don't know whether I should say I fluently speak English, but only Persian and English. I know a little German, but it's I like to pick it up again. Actually, I learn a little bit of Arabic too. I would like to pick up on that again.
Well, you've just done an interview in English, so that's gotta help. If you could spend a day observing life through someone else's eyes, what would you want to see?
I would probably want to be looking at things in Trump's eyes, and just see how the world looks like in his eyes. I think it could be quite interesting to find out how.
It's a bit hard to understand him right now.
Yeah,
so that might make things easier.
That might make it easier to understand him.
Do you have any trivial issue that really matters to you or gets on your goat? Which way cutlery goes in the dishwasher, which way the toilet paper is on the holder, or whether jam or cream goes on the scone first? Do you have any trivial issues?
Not really. I'm not so bothered with order. Sometimes I get a bit conscious about my folders and my computer, but I usually I'm easygoing.
Too easygoing for that question. What would you say is your most annoying habit?
I probably space out sometimes when somebody talks to me.
I'm glad I've had your focus.
So anyway. I think there have been some times where my ex-girlfriends have told me, "Are you even listening?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, of course I am." So I think that is I'm working on that, but I think I was probably the most annoying thing about me.
And what's your go-to comfort food?
I think Italian food. Yeah,
Italian
pizza.
Food.
Yeah.
Pizza. That's great choice.
Always go to an Italian restaurant to get a pasta and end up with a pizza. Always. It's just
Yeah, that's very relatable. Okay, so final question. You can take some more time to answer this one. So you've obviously travelled a bit for your studies and your work. And is there anything that you found to be universally present where you've studied or worked that gives you a real sense of pride to belong to the physics community?
Mm-hmm. I don't know whether I can really take pride in other people's works, but from the trends that I see from other physicists, I quite like this sense of trying to work out laws. I think there's or repeatability in things that happens around people in physics community. I don't know if you have seen that that XKCD comic. There's this guy there's a lever and pulls the lever, and suddenly there's a thunderbolt and gives a shock to the guy, and the guy says, I wonder if it happens again. There's this sense of trying to do trying to find laws, trying to see if things are repeatable, and this sense is quite strong in the physics community. I quite like that. So
it's kind of the piercing kind of search for knowledge,
right? Not taking things as just granted. As I don't know, when you hear about some fact, they usually don't take it immediately as other people might do. They try to find, is that really true? Other circumstances whether that might not happen. So they have this feeling of investigating everything that they hear or see. So I quite like that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Hamid Ohadi.
Thank you, Sam.
You've been listening to Insight, the University of St Andrews Student Physics Society's podcast. I was your host, Samuel Lavery. Thanks to all the wonderful academics of St Andrews. Join us in the future as we learn more of the people making our education. This podcast was produced by myself and our publicity officer, Connor McBride. To find out more about the Physics Society and what we do, please find us on Facebook or Google St Andrews Physics Society for our website. Goodbye!